Veterans Day is a very important day where we honor our veterans who have fought for our freedoms in this country. My dad, John Watson, was in World War II, and he raised us to be very civic-minded, to appreciate the freedoms that we have because of the veterans through all the wars in our country, through the different centuries, have gone to war to fight for us. And my dad, he was in World War II. He was in Third Army. He fought under General George Patton. My father talks about marching as a foot soldier from the south of France all the way up to the Battle of the Bulge. And as a matter of fact, my father volunteered for service. He was an only child, and his father had abandoned him and his mother when he was a small child. So basically he was a single parent. His mom raised him as a single parent, him and his grandmother. And so therefore, technically back on the criteria back then, my father did not have to go off to war, because back then there was only just one male in the family. They would not let that guy go to war, because who was going to take on the family name? Who was going to pass on the family name? But in my dad's case, he wanted to serve. So he volunteered at 17, and my father turned 18 in boot camp, where he was getting on board a transport to go over to Europe. So imagine, back then, these guys that we hear about Pearl Harbor, we hear about the Battle of the Bulge, these were young guys, like brothers and sisters. Just look at the guys that they were seniors in high school. Imagine the men that went off to fight that war for us. My father tells stories about the fact that he didn't talk much about the actual war itself, but he would talk about funny stories, how my father snored a lot, and how he would snore in the foxhole, and his buddy would take the rifle and jab him to wake him up and say, "Shh, the Germans are going to hear you, John. Be quiet." And then my father was injured in a way at the Battle of the Bulge. If you ever watched the movie about Patton, you see how horrible the conditions were. It was freezing cold that winter with lots of snow. And by then, these guys have been using the same pair of army boots, marching for these guys were over there for a year or two. Imagine, 2 years of your life marching through a country with a rifle. I mean, my father was in the infantry division, and he literally, his job was to march next to the tank. March next to a tank, imagine that. And my father got frozen feet at the Battle of Bulge. At the end of that battle, he was, considered injured. So he was airlifted over to England, where they had to cut the boots off his feet. He was lucky that his feet did not get amputated. They were able to save his feet. But my father, I always remember him. He always wore a limp, walked with a limp. And he was a bank manager. And back then, boy, you wore a business suit, you wore dress shoes. And my father used to hate the squeezing his feet into those dress shoes, because they still hurt his feet so much from having those frozen feet. But the things my dad, and I'm sure many of our veterans that you'll see pictured here, along with my dad, they taught us how important it is to be an American and to have the freedoms we have here in this country. And that's why voting is so important. My father fought, and so did so many other men that gave their lives through the centuries, was so that we had this freedom to vote and to govern ourselves. And so on this Veterans Day, I hope we as Americans will pause and thank a veteran, thank someone who's in active duty. Whenever I see, and I travel a lot, whenever I see military people, I go up to them and thank them for their service. And on a day like today's Veterans Day, the challenge is, see if you can find a serviceman and thank him for their service. So God bless America, and I'm proud to be an American.